Blood trickled down Tabitha Zeller's palms as her fingernails dug into her skin, her wedding dress in tatters around her like fallen snow on the dusty Texas ground. The year was 1875, and she had just become the most pitiful spectacle Silver Creek had ever witnessed. Her intended groom, Frederick Holloway, had not only failed to appear for their wedding, but had sent his younger brother with a hastily scrawled note explaining he'd fled to California with the saloon owner's daughter. The church had emptied quickly, whispers following Tabitha out the door as she stumbled down the steps, her veil catching on a nail and ripping from her carefully arranged auburn hair. Her mother had already fainted, her father's face a thundercloud of rage and humiliation. Neither had followed her when she ran. Now, as the hot June sun beat down on her tear-streaked face, Tabitha huddled against the weathered wall of an abandoned stable at the edge of town. Her once beautiful dress, sewn with such care and anticipation, was torn at the shoulder and along the side where she'd caught it on a fence post in her desperate flight from prying eyes. "Miss, are you hurt?" The voice, deep and concerned, startled her. Tabitha looked up, squinting against the sun to see a tall figure silhouetted before her. As he stepped closer, blocking the harsh light, she could make out his features, strong jaw darkened with stubble, kind eyes the color of a summer storm, and a worn Stetson pushed back on thick dark hair. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice cracking. "Please, just leave me be." He crouched down instead, respectfully keeping his distance, but close enough that she could smell leather and horses and something clean, like soap. "Name's Kieran Ryder," he said softly. "And you're clearly not fine, Miss Zeller." Tabitha stiffened. "You know who I am? Everyone knows who you are today," he said, his tone gentle rather than mocking. "And what happened at the church?" Fresh tears burned in her eyes. "Then you know I'm the town joke. The bride left waiting at the altar by a man who preferred a saloon girl." Kieran shook his head. "What I know is that Frederick Holloway is a fool who just gave up the best thing that would ever happen to him." His eyes dropped to her dress, noticing the torn lace and silk. "Your dress." Tabitha tried to cover the tear with her hand. "It doesn't matter now." "It matters," he said firmly. "Stand up, Miss Zeller." Something in his voice made her obey, though her legs trembled beneath her. Kieran shrugged off his leather vest and draped it around her shoulders. "Come with me," he said. "My place is just beyond that ridge. I promise you'll be safe, and I can help with your dress." "You?" she asked, disbelief momentarily displacing her misery. What would a cowboy know about fixing a wedding dress? A small smile touched his lips. "I've mended more than my share of torn things. When you grow up with little money and 5 younger siblings, you learn skills out of necessity." Tabitha hesitated, glancing back toward town. The thought of returning home to face her parents, the pitying looks, the whispers behind hands, it was unbearable. "No one will look for you at my place," Kieran said, as if reading her thoughts. "And I give you my word as a gentleman, your virtue and reputation will remain intact." "I'm not sure I have much of a reputation left to protect," she said bitterly. "All the more reason to let me help you." "Come on now," he offered his hand. "Unless you'd rather sit here until dark?" The kindness in his eyes undid her. Tabitha placed her trembling hand in his calloused palm and allowed him to help her to her feet. He whistled, and a beautiful chestnut mare trotted around the corner of the stable. "This is Penny," he said, stroking the horse's neck. "She's gentle as a lamb. Can you ride?" Tabitha nodded. Her father had taught her to ride astride when she was young, though her mother had later insisted she learn the proper side-saddle position befitting a lady. Before she could explain this, Kieran had lifted her effortlessly onto Penny's back, her torn dress fluttering around her. "Hold tight to her mane," he instructed, then began leading the horse away from town, walking beside them rather than mounting behind her. As they climbed the ridge, Tabitha looked back at Silver Creek. From this distance, the town seemed so small, the church steeple rising above the other buildings like an accusing finger pointed at the sky. Had it only been hours ago that she'd walked through its doors, her heart full of hope for her future with Frederick? "He didn't deserve you," Kieran said quietly, following her gaze. "A man who would do what he did has no honor. Then why did he ask me to marry him in the first place?" The question that had been tormenting her since the moment Frederick's brother had handed her that note. Kieran was silent for a moment. Some men don't recognize the value of what they have until they've thrown it away. Others never learn at all. They crested the ridge, and Tabitha saw a small but well-kept cabin nestled in a grove of cottonwood trees. A corral held several horses, and a small garden plot showed neat rows of vegetables. It wasn't grand like her father's house in town, but there was something welcoming about it that made her chest ache with an emotion she couldn't name. Kieran helped her dismount at the cabin door. "It isn't much," he said, a hint of self-consciousness in his voice. "But it's clean and safe." Inside, the cabin was simple but tidy. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, a wooden table with 4 chairs sat in the center, and a curtained-off area presumably contained a bed. Shelves lined with books surprised her more volumes than she would have expected a cowboy to own. "Sit," he said, pulling out a chair. "I'll make some tea." Tabitha sank into the chair, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. The emotional turmoil of the day had drained her completely. She watched as Kieran moved efficiently around the small space, hanging a kettle over the fire and taking a wooden box from a shelf. "My sewing kit," he explained, setting it on the table. "Once you've had some tea and feel stronger, I can see about mending your dress." "Why are you helping me?" she asked, the question bursting from her before she could stop it. Kieran paused, kettle in hand. "Because it's the right thing to do." He poured the hot water into a chipped but clean cup. "And because I've seen you in town, at the mercantile and the library. You've always been kind to everyone, including my little sister when most town girls wouldn't give her the time of day because of her limp." Tabitha remembered the girl with the sweet smile and auburn braids who had helped her select fabric months ago. "Emma is your sister?" "I had no idea." "One of 5, he confirmed with a smile, pushing the cup of tea toward her. "I'm the oldest. Our parents died of fever 4 years back. I've been taking care of them since." The revelation shifted something in Tabitha's perception of him. Not just a cowboy, but a man who had shouldered tremendous responsibility at a young age. She guessed he couldn't be more than 25 or 26. "I'm sorry about your parents," she said softly, wrapping her fingers around the warm cup. He nodded his thanks, then gestured to her dress. "If you're willing, I can look at that tear now. It's not as bad as it appears." Tabitha hesitated, then nodded. Kieran moved his chair beside hers and carefully examined the ripped lace and silk at her shoulder, his touch respectful and impersonal. "The silk tore along the seam, which is fortunate," he explained, selecting a needle and thread from his box. "The lace is more delicate, but I can weave the edges back together if you'll permit me to try." "You really know how to sew," she said, watching as his large hands threaded the needle with surprising dexterity. "Like I said, necessity." His eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled. "Emma had nightmares after our parents died. Sitting by her bed mending clothes was the only way I could be there for her without making her feel like a child." As he worked on her dress, his fingers careful not to touch her skin, Tabitha studied his face. There was strength there, but gentleness too. Nothing like Frederick's polished handsomeness that had always seemed to require admiration. "You're staring, Miss Zeller," Kieran said without looking up from his work. Heat flooded her cheeks. "I apologize. I was just thinking about your intended." His voice remained neutral, focused on the delicate lace. "No," she answered honestly. "About how little I knew him, apparently. And how someone can show you who they truly are in a single moment of crisis." Kieran's hands stilled briefly. "That's true enough. Though I prefer to judge people by their everyday actions rather than their worst moments." Frederick's everyday actions were deceptive, it seems, she said bitterly. "He spent a year courting me, all while apparently having feelings for someone else. Some men think they want one life, then discover they want another," Kieran said, resuming his mending. "It doesn't excuse the way he hurt you, but perhaps in time you'll see it as a blessing that you discovered his true character before you were bound to him forever." The thought had not occurred to Tabitha, and it landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through her mind. Would a lifetime with Frederick have been filled with similar betrayals? "There," Kieran said, breaking into her thoughts. "It's not perfect, but it should hold." He leaned back to examine his handiwork. The tear was nearly invisible, the lace meticulously rewoven. "It's remarkable," Tabitha said, touching the mended spot with wonder. "I would never have believed it possible." Kieran shrugged. Broken things can often be made whole again, sometimes stronger than before. He hesitated. The question is, what would you like to do now, Miss Zeller? I can take you back to town when you're ready. The thought of returning to Silver Creek, to the gossip and pity, made Tabitha's stomach clench. I don't know if I can face them all yet. You don't have to. Not tonight, Kieran said. You're welcome to rest here. I can sleep in the barn. I couldn't put you out of your home, she protested. It's no trouble. I often sleep out there when the house is full of my siblings anyway. He stood, gathering the sewing supplies. I'll fetch some fresh water so you can wash up. There are clean clothes in that trunk. They belong to my sister Martha, who's about your size. They're not fancy, but they're clean. Before she could thank him again, he had stepped outside, giving her privacy. Tabitha moved to the trunk he'd indicated and found a simple blue cotton dress. She changed quickly, grateful to be out of the wedding gown that now felt like a costume from a play that had ended badly. When Kieran returned with a bucket of water, he knocked first. Tabitha called for him to enter, and his eyes widened slightly at the sight of her in the simple dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Martha's clothes suit you, he said, setting down the water. Are you hungry? I have stew from yesterday that I can heat. As if in answer, her stomach growled audibly. Tabitha laughed despite herself, the first genuine laugh of the day. I was too nervous to eat this morning, she admitted. Food would be wonderful. As Kieran moved about preparing their meal, Tabitha found herself watching his efficient movements. There was nothing showy or artificial about him, none of the practiced charm Frederick had displayed. Yet there was a quiet confidence in the way he handled himself that she found unexpectedly appealing. Tell me about your siblings, she said as they sat down to bowls of fragrant stew. Kieran's face softened. Emma you've met, she's 16 now. Martha's 18, works as a seamstress in town. The twins, James and Joseph, are 14 and working at the livery stable. And the youngest, Sarah, is 12. She stays with Martha during the week to attend school. It can't be easy, raising 5 children on your own, Tabitha said, impressed. It's not, he admitted. But they're good kids. And I'm not completely alone. The community helps when they can. Yet you still found time to help a stranger today. Kieran met her eyes. You're not a stranger, Miss Zeller. I've known who you are for some time. Something in his tone made her heart flutter strangely. You have. He nodded, breaking eye contact to focus on his stew. It's a small town. And you stand out. Because my father owns the bank, she said, understanding. No, Kieran said quietly. Because you're kind. And because you look at people like they matter, regardless of their station. Tabitha didn't know how to respond to that. Frederick had always praised her beauty, her grace, her family's position. No one had ever valued her simply for kindness. They ate in companionable silence for a while, the trauma of the day gradually receding in the warm, safe atmosphere of Kieran's cabin. As darkness fell, he lit lanterns and built up the fire. I should go to the barn, he said finally. You take the bed. There are extra blankets in the chest if you need them. Thank you, Tabitha said, suddenly anxious at the thought of being alone with her thoughts. For everything. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found me. You would have survived, Kieran said with conviction. You're stronger than you realize, Miss Zeller. Please, she said impulsively, call me Tabitha. A smile touched his lips. Good night, Tabitha. Things will look brighter in the morning, I promise. After he left, Tabitha sat for a long time by the fire, thinking about the strange turn her life had taken in a single day. She had woken as a bride, filled with dreams of her future with Frederick. Now she sat in a cowboy's cabin, wearing a borrowed dress, her heart bruised, but somehow not as shattered as she would have expected. Eventually, she moved to the curtained area and found a neat, simple bed. As she slipped between the clean sheets, the scent of soap and pine and something uniquely Kieran surrounded her. Despite everything, she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. Morning brought streams of golden light through the cabin's windows and the smell of coffee. Tabitha emerged from behind the curtain to find Kieran at the stove, his back to her. Good morning, she said softly. He turned, a smile warming his face. Good morning. I hope you slept well. Better than I expected to, she admitted, accepting the cup of coffee he offered. Thank you. They shared a simple breakfast of cornbread and honey, and Tabitha found herself relaxing in his company. Kieran asked nothing of her, demanded no explanations or decisions, simply offered quiet companionship that soothed her wounded spirit. After they'd eaten, he said, "I need to check on the horses. Would you like to come with me? The morning air is good for clearing the mind." Outside, the day was gloriously bright, the sky an endless blue canopy over rolling hills dotted with wildflowers. Kieran led her to the corral, where several horses nickered in greeting. "They're beautiful," Tabitha said, reaching out to stroke Penny's velvet nose. "They're good workers," Kieran said with obvious pride. "I break horses for the ranches around here. It's how I support the family, along with some cattle of my own." Tabitha watched as he moved among the animals, speaking to them in low, gentle tones. His confidence with them was impressive, his movements sure and respectful. "You have a way with them," she observed. Kieran shrugged. "Horses are honest creatures. They respond to how you treat them. No deception, no games. Unlike people," Tabitha said before she could stop herself. "Some people," he corrected her. "Not all." Their eyes met over the fence, and something shifted in the air between them. Tabitha looked away first, her cheeks warming. "I should return to town today," she said reluctantly. "My parents will be worried, whatever else they're feeling." Kieran nodded. "I'll take you whenever you're ready." "But," he hesitated, "would you like to see something first? It might lift your spirits before you face everyone." Curiosity piqued, Tabitha agreed. Kieran saddled Penny and another horse, a sturdy black gelding he called Midnight. He helped her mount, then led the way up a trail behind the cabin. They rode for perhaps 20 minutes, climbing steadily through increasingly beautiful country. Finally, they emerged onto a plateau overlooking a valley spread out below them like a painting. "Oh," Tabitha breathed, taking in the vista. Silver Creek was visible in the distance, but from here it seemed merely a detail in a much grander picture. Wildflowers carpeted the hillsides, and a stream wound like a silver ribbon through the valley floor. "I come here when life gets too complicated," Kieran said, dismounting and helping her down. "It reminds me that our problems are smaller than they feel." Tabitha moved to the edge of the plateau, feeling the breeze against her face. "It's magnificent. This land was promised to me by Mr. Thornton when I finished paying for it," Kieran said, coming to stand beside her. "I've been saving for years. Another season, maybe two, and it will be mine." "You plan to build here?" He nodded. "A proper home for my siblings. Room for the horses. Maybe more cattle." He glanced at her. "A place with a future." The word future struck Tabitha with unexpected force. Yesterday, she had thought her future was set marriage to Frederick, a home in town, children. Now that future had vanished like morning mist, leaving. What will you do now?" Kieran asked softly, as if reading her thoughts. Tabitha sighed. "I don't know. Return home. Face the gossip. Eventually, the town will find something new to talk about. And then," she shrugged helplessly, "wait for another suitable match, I suppose. That's what my mother will expect." "Is that what you want?" The question caught her off guard. No one had asked what she wanted, not really. Frederick had courted her with her father's blessing, and she had been flattered by his attention, convinced herself she loved him. "I want," she began, then stopped, realizing she wasn't sure. "I want to not feel this way anymore." "Humiliated." "Foolish. You have nothing to be ashamed of," Kieran said firmly. "You loved honestly. He's the one who should feel ashamed." "Did I love honestly, though?" Tabitha asked, the question emerging from a place deep within her. "Or did I love the idea of him, the future he represented?" Kieran studied her face. "Only you can answer that." They stood in silence for a moment, the vastness of the landscape somehow making it easier to contemplate difficult truths. "We should head back," Kieran said finally, "if you're ready to face town." Tabitha nodded, though part of her wished she could stay on this peaceful plateau forever, away from judging eyes and whispers. The ride back to the cabin was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, Tabitha changed back into her wedding dress, now expertly mended. "You don't have to wear that," Kieran said when she emerged from behind the curtain. "You could keep Martha's dress." "I need to face them as myself," Tabitha said, smoothing the white silk. "Not hiding." Kieran nodded, respect clear in his eyes. "I'll saddle Penny again." The ride to town seemed far too short. As they approached Silver Creek, Tabitha's anxiety grew. What would she say to her parents? How would she face the townsfolk who had witnessed her humiliation? "I'll be right beside you," Kieran said, as if sensing her distress. "For as long as you need." His words gave her courage. As they rode down the main street, heads turned and whispers followed them. Tabitha sat straighter in the saddle, her chin lifted despite the flush heating her cheeks. They stopped outside her father's imposing two-story home. Before Kieran could help her down, the front door flew open and her mother rushed out, her face a mask of relief and distress. "Tabitha Elizabeth Zeller, where have you been?" "We've been frantic with worry." Her father appeared behind her mother, his expression unreadable. Tabitha slid from the saddle, Kieran's steadying hand at her elbow. "I needed time, Mother," she said, her voice stronger than she'd expected. "Mr. Ryder kindly offered me shelter." Her mother's eyes widened as she took in Kieran, then narrowed dangerously. "You spent the night with this cowboy." "Mrs. Zeller," Kieran said, his tone respectful but firm. "Your daughter's virtue is intact. I slept in the barn." She needed somewhere safe to gather her thoughts after what happened. Tabitha's father stepped forward. "Ryder, you're the one who breaks horses for the Thornton Ranch." "Yes, sir," Kieran confirmed. Mr. Zeller studied him for a long moment, then surprised Tabitha by extending his hand. "Thank you for looking after my daughter." Kieran shook his hand. "She's a strong woman, sir. You should be proud." "I am," Mr. Zeller said, his eyes softening as he looked at Tabitha. "Come inside, daughter. There are things we need to discuss." Tabitha turned to Kieran. "Thank you," she said, wishing she could express all she felt in those simple words. He touched the brim of his hat. "It was my honor, Miss Zeller." His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Remember what I said. You're stronger than you know." With that, he mounted his horse and rode away, leaving Tabitha to face her parents and whatever came next. Inside the house, her mother fussed and fretted, examining the mended wedding dress with astonishment and pressing tea upon her. Her father was quieter, watching Tabitha with thoughtful eyes. Frederick sent another note. He said finally, when her mother paused for breath, "Apologizing to us for the embarrassment he caused." "To you," Tabitha noted. "Not to me." "No," her father acknowledged. "Not to you." "It doesn't matter," Tabitha said, surprising herself with how true it felt. "He's made his choice." "Well, we must think about your future now," her mother said briskly. "Perhaps we could visit your aunt in Boston for a while, until the gossip dies down. There are many eligible gentlemen there who wouldn't know about this unfortunate incident." The thought of being paraded before more eligible gentlemen made Tabitha's stomach turn. "I don't want to leave Silver Creek," she said firmly. "But, darling, the talk will die down," Tabitha interrupted, "and I refuse to slink away as if I've done something wrong." Her father smiled slightly. "You sound like your grandmother." She had the same steel in her spine. "Father," Tabitha said, making a sudden decision, "I'd like to work at the bank." Both her parents stared at her in shock. "The bank?" her mother repeated. "But why would you want to do such a thing? It's hardly appropriate for a young lady of your standing." "Because I need something meaningful to do," Tabitha explained. "And because someday, I want to understand how to manage my own affairs, not be dependent on a husband to do it for me." Her father studied her thoughtfully. "Your grandfather always said women had a head for figures that men lacked. He taught your mother to keep the books, though she pretends now she never learned." "Harold," her mother protested. "It's true, Eleanor," he said mildly. "You were quite proficient before you decided it wasn't fashionable." Tabitha looked at her mother with new interest. "You never told me that." Mrs. Zeller smoothed her skirts. "It wasn't important. A wife's duty is to her home and children." "And what if I want more than that?" Tabitha asked. "What if I want to build something of my own before I consider marriage again?" Her parents exchanged glances. Finally, her father nodded. "You can start on Monday. Mr. Peterson has been complaining about the state of our filing system for months. You can learn from him, see if you have an aptitude for the work." Relief and gratitude washed through Tabitha. "Thank you, Father." "Don't thank me yet," he warned. "Banking isn't all ledgers and neat columns. There are difficult customers, complicated problems. You'll need to prove yourself." "I will," she promised. Later, in the privacy of her room, Tabitha stood at the window looking out at Silver Creek. The town that had witnessed her greatest humiliation would now see her rise from it, stronger and more determined than before. Her thoughts drifted to Kieran Ryder, to his quiet strength and unexpected gentleness, to the way he had mended her dress with such care, as if the broken pieces deserved to be made whole again. Broken things can often be made whole again, sometimes stronger than before, he had said. Perhaps he had been talking about more than just her dress. Monday morning arrived with a mixture of dread and anticipation. Tabitha dressed carefully in a practical blue dress, her hair neatly pinned up. As she walked to the bank beside her father, she felt the stares and heard the whispers, but held her head high. The first day was overwhelming, learning filing systems, understanding the basics of accounts, navigating the hierarchy of the bank. By evening, her head was spinning with new information, but she felt a sense of accomplishment that had nothing to do with anyone else's approval. Days turned into weeks. The gossip about her failed wedding gradually faded as Silver Creek found new topics for discussion. Tabitha threw herself into learning everything she could about banking, surprising Mr. Peterson with her quick mind and attention to detail. Occasionally, she would catch glimpses of Kieran in town buying supplies at the mercantile, speaking with the blacksmith, once attending church with his siblings. Each time, he would tip his hat to her, a gesture that invariably made her heart beat faster. One afternoon in late July, as Tabitha was locking up the bank, she heard someone call her name. Turning, she saw Emma Ryder hurrying toward her, her slight limp not slowing her down. "Miss Zeller," the girl said breathlessly, "I wanted to thank you for helping Martha get the seamstress job at Mrs. Whitaker's shop." "I didn't do much," Tabitha demurred. "I simply mentioned to Mrs. Whitaker that I'd heard Martha was talented with a needle. The samples of her work spoke for themselves." "Still, it means so much to our family," Emma insisted. "Kieran works so hard, and this will help ease his burden." At the mention of Kieran's name, Tabitha felt a now familiar warmth spread through her. "How is your brother?" Emma's eyes brightened. "He's well. Working too hard, as always." She hesitated. "He asks about you sometimes. Casually, you know, but I can tell he's interested in the answer." Tabitha fought to keep her expression neutral. "Does he? He saved your wedding dress," Emma continued. "He told us how he found you and helped mend it. It was so romantic, like something from a novel." "Emma," a male voice called, and Tabitha looked up to see Kieran approaching, his expression a mixture of exasperation and embarrassment. "Are you bothering Miss Zeller?" "Not at all," Tabitha assured him quickly. "Emma was just thanking me for a small part one played in Martha's new position." Kieran's eyes met hers, and the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. "How are you, Miss Zeller?" "Well, thank you," she replied. "I'm working at the bank now." Surprise and admiration flashed across his face. "Are you? That's unexpected, but not unwelcome," she said. "I'm finding I have quite a head for figures. I never doubted you could do whatever you set your mind to," he said with such sincerity that Tabitha felt her cheeks warm. Emma looked between them, a knowing smile on her face. "I just remembered. I need to stop at the mercantile before they close," she said. "Kieran, why don't you walk Miss Zeller home? It's on your way." Before either could protest, she had hurried off, leaving them alone on the boardwalk. "You don't need to walk me home," Tabitha said, suddenly shy. "I'd like to," Kieran replied, "if you don't mind the company." They fell into step together, their shadows stretching long in the late afternoon sun. For a while, they walked in comfortable silence. "Your sister seems happy about Martha's new position," Tabitha said finally. Kieran nodded. "It means a lot to us. Martha's always had a gift with a needle, and now she can contribute to the family in a way that uses her talents." "Like you did with my dress," Tabitha said softly. "That was nothing," he demurred. "It wasn't nothing to me," she insisted. "You showed kindness when I needed it most. You reminded me that broken things can be mended." Kieran stopped walking, turning to face her. "You were never broken, Tabitha. Hurt, yes, but not broken." The use of her first name, spoken with such warmth, made her breath catch. Sometimes it felt that way. "And now," he asked, his gray eyes searching hers, "now I feel like I'm becoming someone new, someone stronger." He smiled. "I see that in you. The whole town does. The way you've held your head high, taken on new challenges. It's admirable." They had reached her house, but Tabitha was reluctant for their conversation to end. Would you like to come in for tea?" "My parents won't be home for another hour." Kieran hesitated, glancing at the imposing facade of the Zeller home. Perhaps another time. I have the horses to tend to, and Sarah will be expecting supper. Disappointment washed through her, though she understood. Of course. But, he added, his voice dropping slightly, I'll be bringing some horses into town on Saturday for the Thornton Ranch. Perhaps you might like to ride out to that spot I showed you? If you're not working at the bank, that is. Hope fluttered in Tabitha's chest. The bank closes at noon on Saturdays. Then I'll meet you here at 1 o'clock, Kieran said. If that would be agreeable to you. Very agreeable, Tabitha replied, unable to keep the smile from her face. Until Saturday, then. Kieran tipped his hat and turned to go, then hesitated. Tabitha. Yes. I'm proud of you, he said simply, for finding your own way forward. The words stayed with her long after he had gone, warming her like sunlight from within. Saturday couldn't come quickly enough. Tabitha found herself watching the clock at the bank, counting the minutes until noon. When she finally locked the doors, she hurried home to change into a riding outfit that had hung and used in her wardrobe since Frederick had declared riding unladylike and encouraged her to give it up. At precisely 1 o'clock, Kieran arrived with 2 horses, Penny and a gentle gray mare he introduced as Willow. She's got a smooth gait, he explained as he helped Tabitha mount. And she's patient with less experienced riders. I'm not inexperienced, Tabitha protested, gathering the reins confidently. I rode before I met Frederick. He didn't approve, so I stopped. Something like anger flashed briefly in Kieran's eyes. There seems to be a lot Frederick didn't approve of. Yes, Tabitha agreed thoughtfully. I'm only now realizing how much of myself I set aside to please him. They rode out of town side by side, Tabitha reveling in the forgotten joy of being on horseback. The day was perfect, clear blue sky, gentle breeze, wildflowers nodding in the meadows they passed. Kieran led them on a different route than before, showing her a hidden waterfall where rainbow trout flashed in the pool below, a grove of ancient oak trees where deer grazed unafraid, and finally, the plateau with its breathtaking view. They dismounted and let the horses graze while they sat on a fallen log, sharing the lunch Kieran had brought: bread, cheese, apples, and a jar of honey. This place feels magical, Tabitha said, looking out over the valley. As if nothing bad could touch you here. That's why I wanted to own it, Kieran admitted. After our parents died, I promised my siblings I'd build them a home where they'd always be safe. This land felt right from the first moment I saw it. How much longer until it's yours? If the horse breaking goes well this season, and the cattle prices hold. Maybe by spring. Tabitha thought about the stark difference between Kieran's dreams and Frederick's. Frederick had wanted status, admiration, the right connections. Kieran wanted only to provide security and happiness for those he loved. What will you do after all your siblings are grown? She asked. When they have homes and families of their own? Kieran gazed out at the horizon. I'd still want this place. Still raise horses. But I'd hope not to be alone here. He glanced at her, then quickly away. That probably sounds foolish to you. Not foolish at all, Tabitha said softly. It sounds like a beautiful future. They sat in companionable silence, watching the shadows lengthen across the valley. Finally, reluctantly, Kieran suggested they should head back before darkness fell. As they rode toward town, Tabitha found herself wishing the day would never end. Being with Kieran was unlike being with anyone else. He listened when she spoke, valued her opinions, encouraged her independence rather than trying to constrain it. Thank you for today, she said as they reached the edge of town. It was wonderful. Would you like to do it again? Kieran asked, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Very much, Tabitha replied without hesitation. His smile lit up his face. Next Saturday? Next Saturday, she agreed. And so began a pattern. Each Saturday after the bank closed, Kieran would arrive with the horses, and they would ride out into the countryside. Sometimes they revisited the plateau. Other times they explored new areas. They talked about everything: his hopes for his siblings' futures, her growing confidence at the bank, books they had both read, dreams they harbored. In town, people noticed. Whispers followed them, but of a different sort than before. These whispers held speculation, curiosity, and in some cases, disapproval. The banker's daughter and a horse-breaking cowboy made an unlikely pair. Tabitha's mother was the first to raise objections. Darling, I understand Mr. Ryder was kind to you after the incident. But these weekly rides are causing talk. He's not of our social circle. I don't care about social circles anymore, Mother, Tabitha replied calmly. Kieran is a good man. Honest, hardworking, kind. But he has no prospects, no family connections. He has 5 siblings who adore him. Tabitha interrupted. He's saving to buy land of his own. And he treats me like a person with a mind and a heart, not an ornament to be displayed. Her mother looked startled. Is that how you felt with Frederick? Sometimes, Tabitha admitted, though I didn't recognize it then. Her father, surprisingly, was more supportive. Ryder's got a good reputation, he said when her mother appealed to him. Thornton speaks highly of his work ethic and integrity, and I've seen how he looks at Tabitha with respect. But Harold, he's a cowboy, her mother protested. He's a man building a future, her father corrected. And our daughter is a grown woman who can make her own choices. Tabitha hugged her father impulsively. Thank you for understanding. As summer turned to fall, Tabitha's feelings for Kieran deepened into something she hadn't experienced before, not the fluttering excitement she'd felt with Frederick, but a steady warmth that grew stronger with each passing day. Being with him felt right, as if she'd found a part of herself she hadn't known was missing. One crisp October afternoon, as they sat on their log at the plateau, watching golden leaves drift down from the cottonwoods, Kieran seemed unusually quiet. Is something wrong? Tabitha asked, concerned by his silence. He took a deep breath. I need to go away for a while. Tabitha's heart sank. Away? Where? What? There's a horse auction in Denver, he explained. Mr. Thornton wants me to go assess some stock for him, and I have cattle to sell. It's a good opportunity, but I'll be gone for 3 weeks, maybe 4. Oh, Tabitha said, trying to hide her disappointment. That does sound like a good opportunity. Kieran turned to face her, his expression serious. Tabitha, before I go, I need to know something. What is it? She asked, her pulse quickening at his tone. These months we've spent together. What do they mean to you? The directness of the question took her breath away. They mean everything, she said honestly. Being with you makes me happier than I've ever been. Relief washed over his face. I've been afraid to speak plainly. You were hurt so badly, and I didn't want to pressure you. But I can't leave without telling you that I'm in love with you. I have been since that first day, when you sat in your torn wedding dress and still had the courage to hold your head high. Joy bloomed in Tabitha's chest, so intense it was almost painful. I love you too, she whispered. I think I've known it for months, but was afraid to admit it, even to myself. Kieran took her hands in his. I have nothing to offer you yet. The land isn't mine, the house isn't built. I know your parents expect more for you. I don't need more. Tabitha interrupted. I need you. Your kindness, your strength, your honesty. Everything else we can build together. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. I made this, he said, opening it to reveal a simple ring. A small, perfect pearl gleamed against dark velvet. It's beautiful, Tabitha breathed. It was my mother's, Kieran explained. The only valuable thing she owned. She told me to give it to the woman I wanted to build a life with. He took a deep breath. I'm not asking for promises now. I know I need to prove myself worthy first, but I want you to have this as a token of my intentions. When I return from Denver, if you still feel the same, I'll speak to your father properly. Tabitha took the box with trembling hands. I don't need proof of your worth, Kieran. I already know the man you are. He smiled, bringing her hands to his lips and kissing them softly. Nevertheless, I want to do this right. You deserve a man who can offer you a secure future, not just dreams. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the plateau, Kieran leaned closer. May I kiss you, Tabitha? I've wanted to since that first day. In answer, she moved toward him, closing the distance between them. His lips met hers with gentle reverence, a kiss that held both promise and restraint. Tabitha felt it down to her soul, a connection deeper than anything she had experienced before. When they parted, Kieran's eyes were filled with wonder. I'll come back to you as quickly as I can, he promised. I'll be waiting, Tabitha replied. With this, she slipped the ring onto her finger, where it fit as if made for her. The weeks of Kieran's absence stretched endlessly. Tabitha threw herself into her work at the bank, impressing her father and Mr. Peterson with her growing expertise. She visited Kieran's siblings, helping Sarah with her schoolwork and spending time with Emma, whose friendship had become precious to her. Letters arrived from Denver. Kieran's handwriting was as straightforward as the man himself, his words painting pictures of the bustling city and the business he was conducting. Each letter ended the same way. Counting the days until I see you again. All my love, K. Tabitha kept the pearl ring on a chain around her neck, hidden beneath her high-collared dresses. It was a secret happiness, a tangible reminder of the future they had begun to plan. For weeks after his departure, Tabitha was at the bank when she heard the commotion outside. Horses were coming into town, the Thornton Ranch hands returning from Denver with new stock. Her heart leapt. Kieran was back. She forced herself to finish the ledger entry she was working on, though her hands trembled with excitement. When she finally stepped outside, the street was filled with dust and activity as the horses were led toward the Thornton Corral. And there he was, tall and proud on Midnight's back, directing the operation with quiet authority. He hadn't seen her yet, focused on his work, and Tabitha took a moment to simply drink in the sight of his sun-browned face, strong shoulders, the quiet confidence in his bearing. Then he turned his head, and their eyes met across the crowded street. His whole face transformed with a smile that made Tabitha's heart race. He said something to one of the ranch hands, then urged Midnight through the throng toward her. "You're back," she said, unable to keep the joy from her voice as he dismounted before her. "I am," he confirmed, his eyes never leaving her face. "And I've missed you every minute." Propriety demanded restraint in such a public setting, but Tabitha found she didn't care what anyone thought. She stepped forward and placed her hand on his arm. "I've missed you too." The touch, simple as it was, seemed to affect Kieran deeply. His eyes darkened, and he covered her hand with his own. "I need to finish here," he said regretfully. "But may I call on you tonight? There's much I want to tell you." "Yes," Tabitha said without hesitation. "Come for dinner. My parents will be expecting you." His eyebrows rose in surprise. "They will?" Tabitha smiled. "I may have mentioned you'd be returning today, and that you had matters to discuss with my father." Understanding dawned on Kieran's face, followed by a mixture of nerves and determination. "Then I'll be there. 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock, she confirmed. Kieran appeared at the Zeller home precisely on time, freshly shaven and wearing his best clothes, still simple compared to what Frederick might have worn, but impeccably clean and well kept. He brought flowers for Tabitha's mother and a bottle of good whiskey for her father. Dinner was initially tense. Mrs. Zeller made polite conversation while studying Kieran with barely concealed assessment. Mr. Zeller was more direct, questioning Kieran about his business in Denver, the prospects for cattle prices, his plans for the future. Kieran answered honestly, neither embellishing his circumstances nor apologizing for them. "I've put a deposit on the land," he told them. "Mr. Thornton was pleased with the horses I selected in Denver and has offered me a partnership in breeding stock next season. With that and my cattle, I'll be able to pay off the land by spring and begin building a proper home." "And where do you see yourself in 5 years, Mr. Ryder?" Mrs. Zeller asked. Kieran's eyes met Tabitha's briefly before he answered. "With a thriving ranch, madam. A place where my siblings can always find shelter if they need it. And hopefully," he cleared his throat, "a family of my own." After dinner, Mr. Zeller invited Kieran into his study while Tabitha helped her mother clear the table, her stomach fluttering with nerves. "He's not what I expected for you," her mother said quietly as they stacked dishes. "He's everything I need," Tabitha replied. "More than I knew to hope for." Mrs. Zeller studied her daughter's face. "You truly love him." "I do, mother. More than I ever loved Frederick. That was a girl's infatuation. This is different, deeper." Her mother sighed. "Your father likes him. Says he reminds him of himself at that age, determined, hard-working, with clear goals." She touched Tabitha's cheek gently. "I only want your happiness, you know." "I know," Tabitha said, covering her mother's hand with her own. "And I am happy, truly." The study door opened, and both men emerged. Kieran's face was solemn, but his eyes found Tabitha's immediately, a quiet joy in their depths that told her everything she needed to know. Her father cleared his throat. "Tabitha, Mr. Ryder has asked for my blessing to court you formally, with the intention of marriage once his circumstances allow. I have given it, with certain conditions he has agreed to." "What conditions?" Tabitha asked, a touch of wariness in her voice. "Nothing unreasonable," her father assured her. "That the courtship last at least 6 months, to give you both time to be certain that he complete the purchase of his land and begin building a suitable home before the wedding, and that you continue your work at the bank for as long as you wish, even after marriage. The last condition surprised Tabitha. You want me to keep working? You have a gift for it, her father said simply. It would be a waste to set it aside. And Mr. Ryder agrees. Tabitha looked at Kieran, who nodded. I would never ask you to give up something that brings you such satisfaction, he said. Your mind is one of the things I love most about you. Joy welled up inside her, threatening to overflow. Then I accept these conditions gladly. Mrs. Zeller dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Well, I suppose I should start planning for another wedding. Though perhaps a smaller affair this time. Much smaller, Tabitha agreed fervently. And perhaps in the spring, when the wildflowers bloom on Kieran's land. Our land, Kieran corrected softly. The following months passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Kieran divided his time between breaking horses, tending his growing herd of cattle, and beginning work on their future home. Tabitha continued at the bank, impressing her father so much that he promoted her to assistant manager, causing a stir in town that was quickly silenced by her obvious competence. They spent every free moment together riding on Saturdays, Sunday dinners with both families, quiet evenings planning their future. The pearl ring moved from the chain around Tabitha's neck to her finger, a public declaration of their intentions that set tongues wagging throughout Silver Creek. Some approved, others didn't, but Tabitha found she cared less and less about others' opinions. The confidence she had begun to discover after Frederick's betrayal blossomed fully under Kieran's steady love and support. Winter came with snow and bitter cold, slowing progress on the house, but not dampening their spirits. Kieran brought Tabitha to the building site whenever weather permitted, showing her the sturdy foundation, the framing that was beginning to take shape. It will have 4 bedrooms, he explained as they stood in the snow, his arm around her waist. 1 for us, 1 for guests, and 2 more for whatever the future brings. Tabitha leaned against him, imagining children running through the rooms, filling the house with laughter. It's perfect, she said. Exactly what I would have chosen. Spring arrived early that year, as if nature itself was eager for their new beginning. The land burst into bloom, wildflowers carpeting the hillsides in a riot of color. The house progressed rapidly, the frame giving way to walls, a roof, windows that caught the sunlight. On a perfect May morning, with the scent of wildflowers carried on a gentle breeze, Tabitha stood in a simple white dress, not the elaborate wedding gown from before, but a new creation Martha had made with loving hands. Lace adorned the bodice and sleeves, each stitch a testament to the family she was joining. The ceremony was small, held on the plateau overlooking the valley. Only family and close friends attended the Zellers, Kieran's siblings, Mr. Thornton and his wife, a few others from town who had supported them throughout. As Tabitha walked toward Kieran, her father beside her, she thought of that terrible day nearly a year before, when she had sat in torn lace, believing her life was over. How wrong she had been. That ending had been the beginning of something far more precious, far more real. Kieran waited for her beneath an arch of wildflowers, his eyes filled with a love so profound it took her breath away. As her father placed her hand in Kieran's, she felt the rightness of it deep in her soul. I knew from the first moment, Kieran whispered as they stood before the minister. When you looked up at me with tears on your face but fire in your eyes, I knew you were the strongest woman I'd ever meet. And I knew when you showed me that broken things could be mended, Tabitha replied softly, that sometimes they become stronger at the broken places. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, promises made not in the heat of passion but in the steady warmth of deep, abiding love. When Kieran slipped the gold band alongside her pearl ring, Tabitha felt her heart might burst with happiness. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the minister declared. You may kiss your bride. Kieran's kiss was tender yet profound, a sealing of their bond that made the assembled guests burst into applause and cheers. The celebration afterward was joyful, a feast spread on tables beneath the cottonwood trees, music from fiddles and guitars, dancing that continued as the sun set and lanterns were lit, casting a golden glow over the gathering. As evening deepened, Kieran led Tabitha away from the celebration, down to their new home. Inside, everything was ready, simple furniture crafted by Kieran's hands, curtains sewn by Martha, a quilt made by Mrs. Zeller as a wedding gift. "Welcome home, Mrs. Ryder," Kieran said, lifting her over the threshold. Tabitha wrapped her arms around his neck. "It's everything I ever wanted," she whispered. "Everything I didn't know to dream of until you showed me." Later, as they lay in each other's arms in the quiet darkness of their new home, Tabitha thought about the journey that had brought them here. The pain of Frederick's betrayal had faded to a distant memory, important only because it had led her to this moment, this man, this life. "What are you thinking?" Kieran asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "That sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best," she replied. "If I hadn't been sitting there in my torn wedding dress, you might never have stopped." "I would have found you somehow," Kieran said with conviction. "Some things are meant to be." Tabitha smiled in the darkness. "Like a cowboy who can sew and a jilted bride who found her strength?" "Exactly like that," he agreed, pulling her closer. "Exactly like us." 1 year later, Tabitha stood on the porch of their home, watching as Kieran worked with a young colt in the corral. The ranch was thriving. The partnership with Thornton had proven profitable. Their cattle herd was growing, and the house had become a home filled with warmth and love. The bank still occupied her mornings 3 days a week, her father having promoted her to manager of accounts, a position that allowed her to use her skills while maintaining time for the ranch and their life together. As she watched Kieran's gentle, patient work with the colt, Tabitha rested her hand on her swelling belly, feeling the flutter of new life within. Their first child, due in the autumn, a continuation of the love they had built together. Emma, now courting a young man from town, emerged from the house to stand beside her. "He's good with them," she observed, watching her brother. "He'll be a wonderful father." "Yes," Tabitha agreed, her heart full. "The best." The sun was setting over the valley, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. From this vantage point, Tabitha could see the plateau where they had married, the trails they had ridden together, the land that had become the foundation of their shared dreams. Kieran looked up from his work, spotting her on the porch. Even after a year of marriage, his smile still made her heart race. He said something to the ranch hand working with him, then made his way toward the house, his stride purposeful. "How are my two favorite people?" he asked, resting his hand beside hers on her belly. "We're perfect," Tabitha replied, leaning into his embrace. "Absolutely perfect." As darkness fell, they sat together on the porch swing, talking of the day's events and plans for tomorrow. Emma had gone inside to prepare dinner, the delicious smells wafting through the open windows. "Do you ever think about that day?" Kieran asked quietly. "When we first met?" "Sometimes," Tabitha admitted. "But not with sadness anymore. How could I regret the path that led me to you?" Kieran kissed her temple. "I still have it, you know. The piece of lace I cut away when I mended your dress. I keep it in my box of important things." Tabitha looked at him in surprise. "You saved it?" "Why?" "To remind me," he said simply, "that sometimes the most beautiful things come from moments of breaking. That what seems like an ending can be the beginning of something far more precious." Tabitha leaned her head against his shoulder, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. The life they had built together was not without challenges. There had been droughts that threatened the cattle, a fire that damaged part of the barn, days when they disagreed and had to find their way back to each other. But through it all, their love had only deepened, strengthened by the tests they faced together. Like the dress he had mended on that first day, they had learned that broken places could be made whole again, stronger at the seams. "I love you, Kieran Ryder," Tabitha whispered, "more with each passing day." "And I love you," he replied, his hand gentle on her belly where their future grew. "My strong, beautiful wife. The woman who taught me that sometimes the most perfect dreams are the ones we never knew we had." As night settled fully over their land, they sat together in contented silence, the promise of tomorrow stretching before them like the vast Texas sky, boundless, bright with possibility, and filled with stars.